What's going on, guys? It's fight season MMA, and today I want to make a video talking about Islam Makhachev and why he can only be the only number one pound for pound fighter inside the organization. I know a lot of people are going out there and saying Jon Jones is the number one pound for pound fighter. We get Dana White, a bunch of the fans. Really, that cannot be the case. It has to be Islam Makhachev. No doubt. 100% the best fighter pound for pound inside the organization. And today I'm going to tell you why that is. If you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow. While you're down there, please turn on the post notifications and go head over to my TikTok at Fight Season MMA, just so you guys can help support the channel over there as well and grow it on that platform. But without further ado, let's jump into the video talking about why Islam Makhachev is the only rightful number one pound for pound fighter inside the UFC organization. So when you go through the UFC's pound for pound rankings, you have Islam at 1, Jon Jones at 2, Pereira at 3, Topuria at 4, Belal Muhammad at 5, Dricus at 6, Merab at 7, Aspinall at 8, and I could keep going on, but I'm really looking at these top tier fighters, and I see Islam Makhachev, and genuinely, he is out of the pack compared to the rest. Someone like Alex Pereira wouldn't even top him. Anyone really over there. Pereira should not be in the top 5 or so, considering that you look at his well-rounded game. Now, he's got the most devastating striking game in UFC history, but this is the pound for pound rankings, and if you want to be top 5, you really got to be well-rounded. Now, you look at someone like Belal Muhammad, doesn't have a striking game behind him to really be top 5 pound for pound. I would put someone like Dricus over him. I would put someone like Aspinall over him. I would even put someone like Oleksandr Volkanovski over him too. Looking at other guys, Jon Jones, I think that this is the biggest one of why Jon Jones can't be number one pound for pound. And I don't think it's anything to go with why Jon Jones can't. I think it's why Islam Makhachev can't be. And same thing with Ilia Topuria. I think Ilia is that good as well. I look at Islam Makhachev, and he is so well-rounded in everything he's done. He has had 4 title fights in his entire career. Charles Oliveira, Volkanovski twice, and Dustin Poirier once. And I know a lot of people are going to come and say, oh, well, the Volkanovski fights don't count because he was a featherweight and all this. But genuinely, you look at those performances. He beat Volkanovski off a bad weight cut in Volkanovski's country in Australia. He then came back and proved everyone wrong. And I understand that Volk was on 10 days notice, but he was able to go in there and knock him out in the first 3 minutes. 10 days notice or not, that doesn't change the fact that Islam finished the fight that quickly. And that doesn't really take 10 days notice at all. He could have done that to a Volk, which was on a full training camp. Islam Makhachev has had finishes in each one of his fights since his fight on March 6, 2021 against Drew Dober. He had a submission there, a submission between Thiago Moises at July 17th, and then he got Dan Hooker at October 30th with a submission as well. Makhachev, Bobby Green got him TKO ground and pound. Charles Oliveira had a submission. Decision unanimous against Volk. That's the one decision that he got. KO, TKO versus Volk in submission versus Dustin Poirier. He's going out there and finishing fights inside the UFC, which is absolutely crazy. He's on a 14-fight win streak, the longest win streak in UFC lightweight history. But I know a lot of people are going to be, well, Jon Jones is on a longer win streak. Let's be honest. Did Jon Jones really beat Dominic Reyes? There's no way he did. I look at that fight with Reyes and I see that there was every single factor leading to that fight with Dominic Reyes beating Jon Jones. And I don't care really what everyone says inside the organization. Jon Jones lost that fight. And I will take that as the number one contender coming up here. And I look at Islam, 5 wins by knockout, 12 by submission, on that 14-fight win streak inside the UFC. And yes, he does have a loss, but, you know, everyone gets clipped every once in a while. But Jon Jones kind of got dismantled over a 5-round period, whereas Islam just got clipped coming in, which are, yes, 2 different things that are both losses. One isn't on Jon Jones's resume, which I understand. I understand that the judging has been really not great, but truly, I do think that Islam Makhachev does have the edge over Jon Jones. I think the real question is Islam versus Ilia Topuria, but I look at these stats that I see from Islam. 2.65 significant strikes landed per minute and 1.5 significant strikes absorbed. That is a very good margin considering that Islam isn't throwing out the most significant strikes inside the UFC. But I think the biggest thing that we look is 3.19 submission attempts or takedown attempts average and 1 submission attempt average per 15 minutes for both of those guys. That is a really good number considering that Islam is going out there and really taking down his opponent no matter what. Also, those numbers could be a little deflated even to what Islam is normally doing, considering that Islam is genuinely going out there and submitting opponents pretty easily in that time period. Now, 61% significant strike defense. That's really good. Takedown defense, 91%. And anything over about 85, 80 is elite inside the UFC. Average fight time, 10 minutes and 34 seconds. That kind of number is a little bit wonky considering that Islam has been fighting 5-round fights. He's had that 5-round decision against Volkanovski, and he went to the 5th round with Dustin Poirier. And people are going to also say, why is he pound for pound number 1 when he went to a 5-round war with Dustin Poirier and Khabib was able to get him out of there to the 2nd, 3rd round. And I look at that fight with Dustin, and I see that Dustin was so much more prepared for that fight than the first fight with Khabib. I genuinely think that Dustin knew that he was going to see either Khabib or Islam one more time, and he's been training ever since that loss to work on takedown defense and everything in between, because genuinely Dustin Poirier looked amazing in that fight. Knockdown average, 0.35. I mean, that's not bad, but I look at Islam is in his entirety of his UFC career. He is such a good fighter. He is 100% the pound for pound number 1 fighter, considering he's also got that team in his corner, which is something that is intangibly that you can't really judge off Islam alone. It really allows him to go in there and see the ground clearly and be able to go in there and truly do anything. When you have probably the best grappler inside the UFC in Islam, you look at his control time, you look at his submission attempts, you look at his judo that he has, like him doing the wizard kick on Charles Oliveira, getting him to the ground, a bunch of different things that he has. He's got so many trips and so many tricky tricks that really it is some of the highest level amount of grappling inside the UFC. And also, Islam can strike on the feet. He's a top 5 striker in the UFC right now. There's no way he's not. He outstriked Dustin Poirier. He was competent. He's competent with Volkanovski in the first one, completely outstruck him in the second fight, outstruck Oliveira in their fight. Islam is so balanced, so ready, and genuinely, he is a guy who goes out there to absolutely slay your opponent, and he is so good. And like I said, the only guy who I could really see go up of him is Ilia Topuria. And the reason I don't think Ilia can beat Islam right now is Ilia doesn't have the quality of wins that Islam has. Now, yes, I do think that the 2 wins that Ilia has are the greatest 2 wins in 2024 alone. But Islam has beat Charles Oliveira, he's beat Volkanovski twice, and he's beat Dustin Poirier once, and I think that him doing that in that fashion, and yes, Ilia Topuria has also beat Bryce Mitchell, Josh Emmett, but I just do think that if Ilia gets 1 or 2 more title defenses and Islam falls off or something like that, I could 100% see Ilia as number 1, but Islam Makhachev, in my opinion, is the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the UFC. It's not clear cut from Ilia Topuria, but if you take out Ilia Topuria the mix, there is no other fighter that should be in the conversation of pound for pound number 1 right now. That being Jon Jones, that being Alex Pereira, that being Bilal Muhammad, that being Tom Aspinall, that being Merab, that being Pantoja, anyone like that. There's no way that you can compare them to Islam Makhachev. He's so good, so well-rounded, he's got such great defense, and genuinely, there is no competition for him as the pound for pound number 1 fighter. And I know Dana White is saying that Jon Jones is number 1, but genuinely, if Dana White understood what Islam Makhachev has done inside the UFC and understand and take a minute, besides the marketing and business standpoint, to say that, yes, I know Jon Jones has made me a lot of money and whatnot, and he's never, quote-unquote, lost inside the UFC. He had the Matt Hamill disqualification and the Dominic Reyes win, which should have been a loss, but genuinely, if you can understand that, and yes, I know Islam has lost, but there's a little bit of a different thing if you get caught or if you genuinely lose by decision, which Jon Jones did. I don't know why he doesn't have that on his resume that he lost to Dominic Reyes and the guys had to give Jones that victory, but genuinely, I look at this fight coming up for Islam Makhachev against Arman Tsarukyan. It's the second fight between these two inside the organization, and I do think that Islam is going to go in there and show the number 1 contender that he is rightfully the best UFC lightweight, possibly, in my opinion, in UFC history, but it is very, very close between him and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the UFC content. And please go down there and let me know if Islam isn't number 1 pound for pound fighter, who is, and if Islam is, just let me know why you believe he is the number 1 best fighter inside the UFC right now. I look at Islam's stats. I look at his wins. I look at his win streak, 14 in a row. You don't get that without doing anything. And I understand, like I said, Jon Jones is quote-unquote undefeated if you take off his loss to Matt Hamill and then you don't factor in the Dominic Reyes thing, but I can't consider Jon Jones the pound for pound number 1 fighter when he isn't even the best fighter in his respective division. Islam is so well-rounded. He's such a complete fighter. Top five striker, number 1 grappler. He's got so many submissions. He's got a bunch of different things inside the UFC that he's able to do. He's got more submissions than decisions inside the UFC. He's got great significant strike numbers per minute. He's got great defense. and he's got a 54% takedown accuracy inside the UFC. Genuinely, I look at how good these different fighters are inside the UFC, and I look at Islam being the cream of the crop. Currently, he is so well-rounded, and every little thing that he does is absolutely to a T and perfected, and that's why Islam has to be the number one pound-for-pound fighter inside the UFC. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications and leave a comment talking about why Islam is number one. Also, can you guys go follow my TikTok page at Fight Season MMA over on TikTok? That would be absolutely amazing if you could go do so, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.